and welcome to Galley Stories, stories of the Bering Sea and beyond, hosted by Mark Kaler. My name is Penka Jane, podcast deckhand and longtime listener. We'd thank you to subscribe to the podcast and leave us a review. Here's today's catch.
Hello guys, and welcome back to another installment of Galley Stories, stories of the Bering Sea and beyond. I am your host, Mark Kaler. Today we're not on the Gale, sitting in wonderful Ballard, Washington. We are actually in Rockport, Massachusetts. We've come out east. Some of these guys out on the east side want to have their chance to tell their story. And today our first one is going to be Captain Jeff Klein. Jeff, how are you today?
Very good.
Well, let's start into it with where were you born and what was the first calling to the water?
I was born in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. The water's just always called to me. When I was growing up, I lived a couple blocks from the ocean. As I've moved around the country, I just always lived near the ocean. So I always had that calling to be on the ocean.
Now, prior to the interview, I actually overheard you talking to Jesse about how you got your first commercial fishing experience. You were actually living on a boat out in Ballard, Washington.
Yes, I was. That was right before I went to Alaska. But my first fishing experience was I was living on Cape Cod, and I just got laid off from a painting job. I was sitting on the docks, on the Ocean Street docks right there in Hyannis, and guy comes up to me and asked me if I wanted to help him offload his boat. Started doing that 3-4 times a week with him, and talked the crew into taking me out fishing. And been fishing ever since.
What was the species?
Mussels.
Okay.
It was an interesting fishery, but it was also one of the best fisheries I've ever been involved with. It was just day trips. It was good money. It was hard work. What fish isn't hard work?
We've never had anybody on that fish mussels. Can you explain the entire process for us?
We were using a modified scallop rake. We just lightened it up so it didn't dig as hard. And, it's basically like scalloping. We were just in shallow waters catching mussels off the shoals. It was pretty simple, and then we would put it through a spinner wheel, and it would break up the clumps, and it would go into a chute, and we'd bag it up and stack them. It was a good operation. I worked for a company called Blue Gold Sea Farms. And to tell you the truth, I don't even know if they're still around. But when I worked for them, they treated me good. They took care of me. The money was there, and that seems to be the main thing for most fishermen is the money there.
Mm-hmm. How big of a boat was it?
I want to say it was like 78. The name of the boat was the Isle of Shoals. Old wooden boat. Used to be a swordfish boat. So it had a high mast, and the pulpit wasn't there, but the high mast was still there. And I was only 15 when I started on that boat. And so I used to climb up the mast and go sit up in the steering control. And it was awesome because we were fishing Nantucket Sound. And this is back in the day when there wasn't so many recreational boats out there. The commercial fleets pretty much dwindled in Nantucket Sound. I was just fishing down there recently, and I was always happy when I saw one of the commercial boats out fishing, to see that the legacy's still carrying on down there.
Mm-hmm. Where did you go from there? For how long did you do that even?
I did that for about 1.5 years, and from there I went into the Army for a couple of years, and when I got out I went right back into fishing. It's what I always wanted to do, and I started dragging, I started scalloping, I started doing every fishery I could possibly get my hands on, for every species I could possibly get my hands on.
So let's slow the conversation down a little bit and start with the first fishery you started doing after the Army. Let's dive into every species, but what species and what were you doing?
I started scalloping on a boat called the Little Infant, right out of Hyannis, same port. I wasn't on that boat long. I want to say I only did 3 or 4 trips on it, and then I went dragging. There was the Lady Helen, there was the Rosalie R, the Carol R2. I kind of jumped around on boats. It seems to be the one thing in my career that I'm really good at is jumping boat to boat to boat to boat, and whoever needs me, that's where I'm going. But it all comes down to who's going to pay me the most. You know, is the money going to be there? And I'm not really about money, but at the end of the day, I want to get paid.
Mm-hmm. And dragging, so what species were you dragging for?
Sea bass, gup, fluke, flounder, squid. Basically a mix of everything. When you're dragging, you're going to get, 5, 8, 10 species in a trip. So that was my beginning. I like dragging, but at the same time, it's not my favorite form of fishing.
So how are you handling 5 different species at once?
Just sorting them.
And doing what with them?
Sorting them into different baskets, and each basket weighs approximately 75 pounds, depending on species. And from there, we'd go down. We had to keep a running tally of what we caught. No matter what species, you always got a running tally of what you have on board. So from there, we'd put it in the ice hold and ice them down real good until we hit land to offload. Mm-hmm. But you definitely separate everything. Everything gets separated. So if you 5 species, you got 5 different pens down in the fish hold.
Okay.
That you're working on.
Was there one species that was more profitable than the other, I'm sure?
Squid. Squid's always been the most profitable when I'm dragging. Mm-hmm. Fluke was always a good one. It just depends. Depends on the market as well. One day scup will be a nickel a pound, and the next day it will be 75 cents a pound.
Wow.
It's just all on the market, how much product's on the market, and whether they can even get rid of it. Some guys can't get rid of stuff. I find that real prevalent in the tuna industry. Some guys ship directly to Japan. Every single fish goes to Japan. Other guys keep 90% of their fish domestic because they have the domestic market. And, it's all where it goes and who's buying it, and, it is what it is. Mm-hmm. End of the day, who's paying?
It's all that money.
That's right.
Okay, so hopped around on several boats, dragging, doing some scalloping. Where did you go from there?
Went out west. That's when I was living on a houseboat in Fisherman's Terminal. Ended up going up to Alaska from there. I figured I was just going up for the summer, and it just snowballed, and I was up there for 7 years. My first job was on a little 58-foot longliner called the Sea Spider, and we were catching halibut, did the 24-hour halibut opener, and then did a 10-day black cod opener. And from there, we went and did, I forget what we did after that, but I know we finished up the season out in Dutch Harbor catching gray cod, Pacific cod, mm-hmm. for the crab boats. And once you're in Alaska, there's so much work, it's just not even funny. You do not have to worry about work once you get up there. That was my favorite part of it. I mean, I'd tell no one that I quit a boat, and I'd go to the hotel and just put my bags down, and the phone would ring. And you'd be like, what? Nobody even knows I'm here. There's work up there.
Mm-hmm. What did you do after that 58-footer?
I did that for a year and a half, and then I went crabbing.
Which boat?
I was on a boat called the Chillicothe.
We know the boat.
Yeah, it was 180 foot, dual cranes. It was awesome. That boat was just flat out awesome.
Now, what year would that have been?
89 is when I went up there. Well, beginning spring of 90, and so 91 to 97.
Crab was still happening. Yeah.
Crab was really happening because I want to say 92, the winter of 92, we had the largest Opelio quota ever. And Fish and Game actually had to back it down from what they had originally wanted because of some treaty. I forget the reasoning behind that, but I know they had to back the Opelio quota back down. Yeah, it was a wide open fishery up there. Derby openers, 24-hour openers, and I loved it. There was money to be made. You know, you got on with a good crew and you worked hard, you made money. Yeah, my first year crabbing, that was a whole new experience for me. But that's right up my alley. I loved long lining, hooks, and pots. Those are what I love to do. Long lining, crabbing, lobstering, Dungeness crab. Loved it all. The only fishery I really didn't touch up in Alaska was brown kings. I just, at the time, I wasn't comfortable long lining the big pots. And so I always stayed away from it. You know, and even on the East Coast, I stayed away from the cable long lines. I just one of those preference things. But I have done a little down in Gulf of Mexico, but I prefer not to.
So up in Alaska, 7 years?
Yeah.
Yeah. So the Chillicothe, was that the only other boat you worked on?
Oh, no, I worked on 100 boats up there.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I mean,
back to that where needed?
Yeah, you know, it was easy to find work, and, you know, you're under contract. So after 3 months, you're pretty much, you know, if the boat doesn't want to offer you another contract, you move on. And, you know, some boats, you look at your check at the end of 3 months and you go, why did I do that? So you move on. Yeah, I was on a ton of boats up in Alaska. Even when I left Alaska, it's one of the prevalent things in my life is I'm good at getting on boats, and you know, I'm a great fill-in guy. I'm a great transit guy. It's what I do now.
So then you came back to the East Coast?
When I left Alaska, I went out to Fort Lauderdale to see my father, who still lives down there, and from there I jumped on a little longliner. There was swordfish tuna fishing, and we were fishing out of Stock Island in the Keys, just one key up from Key West. From there, we were fishing down in the Caribbean, fishing the Windward Pass, the Yucatan Pass. I don't even know if they're allowed to go down there anymore. You know, I've heard stories they weren't. But it was a great fishery. Like I said, hooks and pots. It's what I enjoyed. The long line for swords and tuna, that didn't get no better than that. Big fish every day. A lot of fun. Saw stuff that I never thought I'd ever see. You know, big sharks, big everything. Everything's big. See a ton of turtles, ton of whales, porpoises. It gets a little hairy though at times. You know, especially going by the southern Bahamas, and you see the drug boats down there. You see the Cuban refugees trying to get to America, and there's really not much you can do for them. It's tough. It's a tough situation when you know the refugees. You want to help them, but the minute you try to help them, now you got to call the Coast Guard. They're going to make you sit on the people, and they're still not going to get into the U.S. So we used to just wish them luck, toss them a couple bottles of water, and whatever we could. But you know, once they set foot on the boat, they're not getting to America.
Because then you have to call the Coast Guard and report it.
Oh, absolutely. We're getting 10 times the trouble they're going to get in. Yeah, you know, regulations on U.S. citizens are quite unique when it comes to refugees. You really can't show support for them. You can, but you can't. You know, I wanted them to get to America, but you can't help. But you see it all down there. You see it all. Yeah, you see the drug runners. You see piles of black plastic bags floating in the water, and you just look the other way and continue on.
Have you had some pretty good experiences at sea?
Yeah, all my experiences are good at sea.
What makes it?
The people I'm around, the fishing, you know, just the brotherhood of fishing. And I've had a ton of women that I've worked with over the years, and they fit right in, and you know, they work just as hard as the guys, and it's family. You're just out there to make a living and have a good time and make money. You know, that's what it's all about. You know, now I run charter boats for the most part, and it's the same thing. I get guys on there that fish once, twice a year on the ocean. They look forward to the trips as much as I look forward to the trips. So you go out, you always have a good time. You enjoy the day, enjoy the fish, and at the end of the day, you make a little money.
Mm-hmm. What about some of the scarier times? I mean, all these years at sea. Do you remember the first time that you were actually scared?
I've only actually been scared once in my life, and that was on the Shelikoff. We were in 45, 50-foot seas, and they put me on watch. And I was a young kid. I was in my 20s. I'd never seen nothing like that big. It's the only time I've been scared, especially driving the boat, having that responsibility. Now, my entire career, when something bad would happen, you don't get scared. You figure out the problem and you deal with it. And that's what makes a good fisherman. The minute you let fear get involved, it's all over. And even that night on the Shelikoff, you adjust, you adapt, you overcome the situation, and you carry on. But that's the only time I've really, really been scared on the water. And I was happy when my watch was over from that. I tend to like to focus on the good stuff rather than the bad stuff.
You got some good stuff for us then?
Oh, every day's good stuff. I just did 2 trips for a friend of mine out tuna chartering. They were two awesome days. I spent the summer down on Cape Cod working for Bounty Hunter Charters, and I had a great summer. I met 1,000 people down there, and I think I ran somewhere close to 70 charters just on the Cape this year, and had a blast, absolute blast. I had guys that were running other charter boats really help me along and look over me, make sure that I'm safe, and it's just I had an absolute blast. I caught world-class fluke all summer, world-class sea bass. My last 2 days on the water were just world-class tuna fishing, and I can't ask for anything more. And I've been asked to stretch out a story, and I think I got 1 or 2 here that might fit that profile. When I got off the long liner that was up in Block Island, I went to Narragansett, and I knew one person there, and I don't have a fear that I can't find work. If there's an ocean, I can find work. So I hung out for a couple of days, and one of the local lobster companies hired me. At the time, they had 3 boats, and I'd never really been lobstering, so but I'm a big boy, so I can handle some hard work. And they threw me on board a boat called the Mr. Marco, and which turned out to be one of the harder boats to work on. It was just a snappy, rolly boat, and we used to go in all weather. I mean, we really didn't care about any kind of weather. You went and you made money. So we started. The captain at the time, his name was Scott, and like I said, I didn't really know anybody down there, and became friends with the crew. And the thing I hated about that boat is we'd leave in the afternoon, steam all night, and most of the time, you can't sleep, and you show up the next morning and you go to work. And we used to haul for 30 hours straight, and then get about a 4-hour nap, and everybody does a 1-hour watch because you're offshore. And the second day you haul for at least 12, 15 hours, get another 4-hour nap, and then finish up on the third day. The boat was a tough boat. It was a beautiful boat. The maintenance on it was awesome. The owners were awesome. It was just a tough boat.
The way she rode?
Yeah, she was snappy. You really had to have your footing down when you did ride on her. I have a lot of fond memories of that boat, though. I worked there other boats through the years, but that boat always held special to me.
She's still around?
Yes, they still fish her out of Narragansett, Rhode Island. The Campanellas are who own that, and through the years they've struggled. The lobstering hadn't been as good down south of Cape Cod as it was when I was on the boat. But I was also on the boat when there was no pot limits and the size limits were within reason. Now you have gear limits on everything. I think overall, out of all the regulations, those are the ones that hurt the fishermen the most. When you start restricting how many pots they can fish, how big of a net, how long of a gill net, all this really plays into the end game is how much money are you going to be able to make. Mm-hmm. And I've watched the deterioration of the fisheries because of that.
You mentioned that a little while ago, actually. You said that even today you feel special pride when you see a commercial boat leaving because there's not near as many of them doing it.
Correct. The regulations have just put a squeeze on everybody. It's kind of sad. We've been protecting the ocean for my entire career, which is about 35 years on the water. And now all of a sudden they want to put windmills up in the same areas that I've been protecting, that I wasn't allowed to go fish in because we wanted to protect them. And I find that really hard to deal with, especially when we have a 200-mile economic zone and now foreign companies are coming in to build these windmills. They say they're going to hire Americans, but in reality, they're not. They're going to have one or two token Americans, and that's it. It's real shameful what this government's doing to its own people.
Explain to me what's happening with the windmills. I mean, I understand what they're built for, but for our listeners, which we have a lot of listeners back west, what are you dealing with that we haven't even experienced or heard of over there yet?
Okay, now I was still in Rhode Island when they started first talking about the 5 windmills that are off of Block Island. Those got built, and was it bad for the industry? 5 windmills is not going to be bad. But when you put 5,000 of them on the ocean, now we have issues. It's going to change stuff. The wind patterns, the ocean current patterns, the way the fish are. You can't put electricity in water and not expect to have negative results. Now, as I've moved from Rhode Island to the Cape and up into Gloucester area, and I fished all these waters for years and years and years. Well, this summer I saw the windmill boat out here doing sonic testing. They're doing sonic testing on Southern Jeffries Ledge. Excuse me. I find it just hard to fathom that fishermen are still fighting this. I remember when the fishermen fought off the oil companies from drilling on Georgia's banks. And it was the fishermen that stopped it, nobody else. Now they have eliminated the fishermen, so we can't fight this. We need people. We need the average American citizen to understand what they're doing to the fishermen. And that is destroying livelihoods. We need to keep these windmills off the ocean. We do not have enough studies. You look at what the Europeans have done, and I have friends over in Europe that have dealt with the windmills, and they all say bad things about them.
I have never, maybe I'm super uninformed, I had never even heard of them putting windmills in the ocean.
Oh, they want to put windmills from Virginia all the way to Maine. And it's bad. It's not looking good.
Rather than on land.
Rather than on land, because on land they kill birds that people can go find. They are loud. I have 3 in Gloucester. Go stand up there on a windy day. You'll see how loud they are. So the theory is put them on the ocean, out of sight, out of mind. They're going to kill tens of millions of seabirds that nobody's going to be able to record because they're going to float away. It's real detrimental to the environment. Any environmental group that's for these is not there for the environment. one of my favorite sayings is environmentalists aren't good for the environment. And I hold that true today. I care more about the oceans and what goes on in the oceans more than most people do. Because I'm out there every day. I see the whales, I see the porpoises, I see the sea life. I've made my living off of catching fish. One of my favorite sayings is, somebody please tell me how many fish are in the ocean. Because I'll tell you, there's more fish in the ocean than have ever been caught. I love that saying because it's a renewable resource. Don't believe what the government puts out. We have a major problem with sea bass right now. I just started dealing with sea bass once again this year. I hadn't dealt with it for a lot of years, so I was kind of out of the loop. But I have listened to my friends from New Jersey, Connecticut, Rhode Island, Southern Massachusetts all say the same thing. They're overpopulating. I saw it firsthand this year. I had a 5.7 pound sea bass. That is a monster of a sea bass. I couldn't believe it. When you're allowed to grow them that big, there's billions of them. They don't get that big because they're the only ones in the ocean. So, like I said, I try to be environmentally conscious, but I'm on the water. I can't fight these things.
You seem passionate about it.
I love what I do. Most of the guys that are around me know that this is what I love to do. I don't want to do anything else. I don't want to go tugboating. I don't want to get a land job. I don't care what the money is. I want to be on the water. That's all I want to do. I want to go see the fish. I want to, it sustained my lifestyle. I have a much freer lifestyle because I'm a fisherman. If I want to take a month off, I take a month off. If I don't want to go to work this week, I don't go to work this week. But if I want to find work and I want to work every day, I can do that just as well. I like the lifestyle. I like the fact that I am intertwined with the environment. I have friends that are park rangers and they feel the same way about being on land. They feel intertwined to their surroundings. It's a very unique situation to be in when you care so much about what you're doing. And 90% of the people on this planet could care less of what they do for work. They're not happy. It's not a fulfilling job. I've gotten everything I've ever wanted out of fishing. It provides a good living. It's sustainable. I eat fresh seafood 3-4 days a week.
Can't get any fresher than catching it yourself.
Yeah, that's right. It doesn't get any better than that. But back to the windmills, it's really gonna hurt. It's gonna hurt everything. All you really got to do is look at the European studies, and they're doing the same thing over here. You take away the subsidies for these windmills, and they will not exist. So our taxpayers' money is going to pay for these things. Who's going to remove them? I guarantee you start looking at these contracts these wind companies are signing, there's no removal clause in it. So now we're stuck with a junkyard on the ocean. Saltwater eats everything. Anybody that's been around saltwater will tell you saltwater eats everything. So don't expect these windmills to last. They say 10 years, I give it 5. They say 5 years, I say they're done in 2.5. Last summer, or actually last winter, one of the windmills in Gloucester, we have 3 here, had been broken for some time. They had a crane up there and they dismantled the whole thing and then they put it all back together. Well, that crane was there for, I want to say, 15 weeks. At what cost? Cranes aren't cheap. The manpower to run those cranes aren't cheap. They're 15 weeks. Now, great, I love seeing the windmill work. I'm glad we're getting power out of that windmill, but at what cost? Or is that windmill ever going to recoup the cost of just that one incident with the crane? Doesn't need, not even all the equipment that they had to pull the generator down, put a new generator in, Not even the cost of all that, just the crane. I'm kind of hoping one of the callers calls in and asks and has numbers for me, because I don't have time to track all these numbers. I deal with fisheries meetings all the time, and I miss a ton of them because I'm out fishing. This is how the government gets control of the fishermen. They pick the most beautiful bluebird days, and they hold a meeting. And they know all the fishermen are out on the water, and that's just the way it is. And then they're just passing laws and rules. And I would like to say one thing. There are a lot of people that handle the fisheries regulations for the fishermen, namely Bonnie Brady. She's been a godsend for years now. She really does a lot for the fishermen, whether you know her name or not. She's definitely done a lot for the East Coast fishermen. On the West Coast, I know there's a handful of people. They have a tighter grip on the West Coast. I don't know why, but they just do. It's I think part of it is that's where these environmental groups live. They're stretched out from Washington through California, through Oregon, and I feel bad for the West Coast fishermen. They're under constant restraints. Not that the East Coast is much better, and we're under constant restraints over here too.
Mm-hmm. This is where I generally ask, would you change anything about the choices you've made in fishing? But it's clearly you probably wouldn't.
I'm sure there's some small things that I would have liked to have changed, but I'm pretty rock solid on my life choices being a fisherman. I couldn't have met a better class of people. They're pretty much down to earth, good people, trying to raise families and enjoy life. And that's what life's supposed to be. Enjoy your life. You don't like what you're doing, quit. Go find something else to do. There are other industries to get into that are more enjoyable. I mean, I had a friend of mine ask me about going into tug business. It's just not for me. He was talking 6 weeks on, 6 weeks off. And that's the part I don't like. I've spent my whole entire life away from my house. I paid for apartments for a year that I only stepped foot in maybe a dozen times. I enjoy being home now every night. I enjoy having a home that I can be happy to go home to. But as far as the industry goes, I couldn't ask for a better life. It's a great lifestyle. It's not for everybody. It's a hard lifestyle. You got to be prepared to work.
On the West Coast, it seems like our fishing fleet is getting older, and not as many young guys in the game. How is it over here?
Oh, same thing as over here. Back in the 70s, I want to say it was the 70s, the New England fleet was all wooden boats, all Eastern rigged boats. And the government came and gave grants to the fishermen to build bigger and better boats. Now, this was the downside to the fishing industry, because now guys went and built, instead of having a 40-foot wooden boat, they built 80-foot steel boats. The military, the U.S. military, started declassifying certain things. VHF radio was introduced to the fishermen in World War II. The radar, the sonar, and all this stuff. Now we have technology on the boats to go kill fish. That was a big mistake on the government side. I wish the commercial fishing would get back to family-owned businesses. It'll never happen. It's just the way I wish it would go. The government prefers big companies to own multiple boats because they feel it's easier to control. But then you get guys like Carlos Raphael that play the system. He owns a lot of boats, and he played the system, and he played it well. And, and if they didn't catch him, he'd still be doing the same thing. And even now they're trying to put 100% observer coverage on the draggers out here. And what we need is 100% dockside coverage. That's going to be more beneficial. Stop the guys like Carlos Raphael. There's only a handful of them. Everyone knows who they are. The government's never going to touch them because for one reason or another, they're just never going to get touched. And I don't know who Carlos Raphael didn't pay off or didn't kiss ass to, but that's obviously how they caught him. He didn't pay somebody off, didn't kiss the right ass, didn't do something. And that's just one example. I've met guys that I'm very happy that I've never had to work for in this industry. And there's a lot of them. There's at least one or two in every port. I'm not going to drop names. Carlos Raphael was the only name I'm really going to drop there, only because we all know his story. We all know how corrupt he was. And he had police officers on his payroll to look the other way. Everyone knew what happened there. But there's always one or two in every port, and usually once you get involved, you'll understand. I'm glad I've never needed to work for these people, because the last thing I want to do is put money into corrupt hands. My favorite, work for families.
Speaking of that, how do you see, or what would you suggest the young folks that are looking to get into the industry? We're born into it.
Yeah, I wasn't born into fishing at all. I've never had any family members in fishing. I always had that work ethic. For me, I always liked working for families, family-owned boats. You always get treated better. You always get paid just a little bit better. When you work for a company, for a corporation, you're just a number. You're a statistic. You get hurt, you're out the door, you're down the road. With a family, you get hurt, the wife's calling you, the father, your captain's calling you to make sure you're okay, make sure you're fine. You don't see that in the corporate world. So family is what I always tried for. It's getting a little bit harder and harder to find, I know, but they're still out there. I will say they are still out there.
It's good to see that too. It's good to see that.
Yeah, I don't see a whole lot of new blood coming into the industry, and that's a big concern across both coasts. I don't care where you're at. We don't see the young blood getting in, and rightfully so. Who wants to get into an industry where you're so regulated that you're already, from the onset, you're only going to make X amount of dollars. There's no possible way to make any more because of the regulations in place. I was up in Alaska for the IFQs, for the halibut, for the original onset of IFQs, and I watched my crew share go from 15 to 17% being a deck boss engineer down to I couldn't find anything for 8% being the deck boss engineer. I saw a problem with that, and from the day one of the IFQs, I told myself I'll never work under that system ever, and I really haven't. Not to my recollection have I ever worked under IFQs or catch shares or whatever you want to call it on the East Coast. I have worked under the Days at Sea program. I thought it was a workable program. Not the best in the world, but it was workable. It was working. And then they went to catch shares, which is basically IFQs. It puts the product in the hands of the few. And, I was kind of sad to see IFQs in Alaska go that way, because it took it put a lot of fishermen out of business.
Overnight.
I just thought it was bad, and I tried to fight the IFQs. I just wanted my crew share. I was on a qualifying boat. I just wanted my crew share. I didn't want anything else. I wasn't greedy. Judge threw that out. You're a crew member, you're a hired on captain, you get nothing. You have no vested interest in the boat. And, I still feel the same way. I have a lot of vested interest in the boat. I'm the guy down there changing the hydraulic hoses, painting the boat, changing the zincs, changing motors out, changing transmissions out, fueling it up every day, keeping the maintenance going. I'm the guy that's out there working, keeping that boat running. And for me to be kicked out of the industry like that, there's a lot of sore feelings there.
Sounds like it. All right, Jeff, is there anything else you'd like to say before we wrap this up?
Yeah, catch them up, be safe. You got a lot of people that love seafood, and just keep doing what you're doing.
Cool. All right, well, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you.
All right, guys, it's been another installment of Galley Stories, and we will see you next time.
Thanks for listening to Galley Stories. We hope you like what the net brought in. Please leave us a review on iTunes. Whether you like it or not, we're not fishing for compliments. Look us up on Facebook and Twitter too, and reach out to us at galleystories@gmail.com.